I've always believed betrayal cuts the deepest when it comes from family. You can guard yourself against strangers. You can even distance yourself from friends when they change. But when it's your own blood, your sister, the person you grew up with, shared secrets with, and trusted more than anyone in the world, that's a wound that never truly heals. My name is Anna, and this is the story of how the woman I once called my sister destroyed my marriage, shattered my home, and left me standing in the ashes of everything I'd built. But it's also the story of how I rose again, piece by piece, until I became stronger than I ever imagined, and how I made sure she paid for every tear I shed. I'll never forget the day it started, though back then, I had no idea it was the beginning of the end. It was a warm summer evening. My husband, Michael, had just come home from work, and my younger sister, Sophie, was staying with us for a few weeks while she figured out her next step in life. That wasn't unusual. Sophie had always been a bit of a drifter, moving from one dream to the next. We were in the kitchen, and I was serving dinner. I remember glancing over and seeing the way she laughed at something Michael said. It wasn't just a casual laugh, it was the kind of laugh a woman gives when she's trying to be noticed. I brushed it off. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister. But in hindsight, that smile, that was the moment. That was the seed of betrayal, sprouting right there in my own home, under my own roof. To understand why it hurt so badly, you need to know how close we were growing up. Sophie was 3 years younger than me. From the time she could walk, she was my shadow. I protected her from bullies at school, shared my clothes with her, even covered for her when she broke Mom's vase and tried to blame the cat. We had our fights, of course, what sisters don't? But no matter what, we always came back together. She'd slip into my bed at night after a bad dream, whispering, "Don't ever leave me, Anna." And I'd hug her tight, promising I never would. Even as adults, I felt responsible for her. When she struggled in college and eventually dropped out, I was the one who comforted her. When she bounced from job to job, I was the one encouraging her not to give up. She always looked at me with those big blue eyes, so full of both admiration and envy, and said, "You're the strong one, Anna. I wish I could be like you." Little did I know how much envy there really was behind those words. I met Michael when I was 25. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind, hardworking, and he made me laugh. We met at a friend's barbecue, and within a year, we were married. Sophie was my maid of honor. I remember she gave a tearful speech about how I deserved happiness and how Michael was lucky to have me. She hugged me so tightly that night, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Back then I never doubted her sincerity. She was my sister, why would I? Michael and I built a modest but happy life together. We bought a little house in the suburbs, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I worked as a teacher, and he was an accountant. We talked about having kids, though we wanted to wait until we were more financially stable. Life felt steady. Safe. I thought I had it all. Sophie's 20s were a blur of unfinished degrees, failed jobs, and short-lived romances. She had this restless spirit that couldn't seem to settle down. Every time she stumbled, I was there to catch her. So when she showed up at our doorstep one spring, suitcase in hand, saying she needed a fresh start, I welcomed her with open arms. "Stay as long as you need," I told her. "Your family. This is your home too." She smiled at me, that sweet little girl smile I'd seen 1,000 times, and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Anna." And I believed her. At first, everything seemed fine. She helped around the house, cooked dinner sometimes, even made us laugh with her silly stories about failed dates and crazy bosses. But slowly, I started noticing things. The way she dressed around Michael, shorter skirts, lower tops. The way she touched his arm a second too long when she laughed. The way her eyes followed him when he walked out of the room. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, this was Sophie. My sister. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, I even mentioned it to Michael, half joking. "She's a bit flirty, isn't she?" I said. He chuckled, pulling me close. "She's just young, Anna. You worry too much." You know you're the only woman I see. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. So I brushed the unease aside and told myself I was being paranoid. But Sophie started changing. She began criticizing me, little digs at first. Anna, you're always so tired. Maybe if you took better care of yourself. Anna, you're so serious all the time. No wonder Michael looks bored. She'd say it with a laugh, like a joke, but her eyes would linger on mine, sharp and cold. And Michael, he started pulling away. Working late more often. Seeming distracted when we were together. I told myself it was just stress from his job. I told myself Sophie was just being immature. But deep down, a knot of fear was forming in my chest. The confirmation came one Tuesday evening. Michael had gone to take a shower, and his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I would never invade his privacy. But something in my gut told me to look. My hands trembled as I picked it up. And there it was, a message from Sophie. Can't stop thinking about last night. I miss you already. My world tilted on its axis. My stomach lurched, and my vision blurred. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, a joke, anything but what it looked like. But then another message popped up. She'll never know. We just have to be careful. She. That was me. I dropped the phone like it burned me. In that moment, everything I had been denying, the glances, the laughter, the little digs, came crashing down on me. My husband and my sister weren't just betraying me. They were planning it. I waited until Michael came out of the shower, his hair damp, a towel around his shoulders. He smiled at me, unaware that I knew. Who is she? I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. His smile faltered. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Michael. I saw the messages. From Sophie. For a moment, the mask slipped. His face paled, his jaw tightened. Then, instead of apologizing, instead of falling to his knees and begging for forgiveness, he got angry. You shouldn't have gone through my phone, he snapped. That was his defense. Not denial, not regret, anger at me. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. That's all you have to say? You're sleeping with my sister, and you're angry because I found out? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence between us said it all. When I confronted Sophie, I expected tears. Shame. Some hint of the sister I had once loved. But she just crossed her arms and smirked. You were never enough for him, Anna, she said. You're boring. Predictable. He deserves someone exciting. Someone like me. Her words sliced through me like knives. Someone like you? I whispered. You're my sister. Blood doesn't mean anything, she shrugged. Michael and I are in love. You'll get over it. I stared at her, stunned. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, the sister I had protected all my life, she was gone. In her place stood a stranger wearing Sophie's face. Within weeks, everything unraveled. Michael moved out, choosing Sophie without hesitation. Friends I thought were mine sided with them, claiming I was too controlling or too bitter. Even some family members told me to be the bigger person and accept it. I lost not just a husband and a sister, but the life I had built. Nights became endless hours of crying into my pillow. Days blurred together as I dragged myself through work, plastering on a fake smile while inside, I was breaking. I felt invisible. Disposable. Forgotten. But somewhere in the wreckage of my shattered life, a spark remained. One evening, I sat in the dark, staring at an old photo of Sophie and me as children. My hand trembled as I traced our smiling faces. That's when it hit me, they thought they had won. They thought I was broken, weak, defeated. But they had underestimated me. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life crying over their betrayal. I wasn't going to let Sophie steal my future the way she had stolen my past. If they wanted a war, I would give them one. And this time I wasn't going to play fair. I used to think that revenge was ugly. Something that only cruel, bitter people wasted their lives chasing. But when you've had everything stripped from you, your marriage, your sister, your dignity, you begin to understand. Revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about rebuilding me. It was about showing them that no matter how hard they tried to bury me, I would rise stronger than ever. I started with small changes. I forced myself out of bed early, even when my body begged me to sleep. I signed up for a gym membership. At first, I could barely lift 5 pounds without shaking, but I kept going. Each drop of sweat was anger leaving my body. Each mile on the treadmill was one less tear I would cry for Michael and Sophie. I changed my wardrobe. The old Anna wore soft sweaters and neutral colors, always trying to blend in. The new Anna wore bold reds, sharp blacks, dresses that hugged my curves. I wanted the world to see me again. I even chopped off my hair, something Michael always told me not to do because he loved it long. As the strands fell to the salon floor, I felt lighter. Freer. People began to notice the changes. At work, colleagues complimented my energy. Friends I hadn't heard from in months suddenly wanted to reconnect. For the first time in years, I caught strangers turning their heads when I walked into a room. And it drove Sophie crazy. She tried to hide it, but I saw the way her eyes darted over my new clothes, the way her fake smile twitched when she realized I was glowing in a way she wasn't. Michael noticed too. At one family gathering, his gaze lingered on me longer than it should. I smirked to myself. He may have chosen Sophie, but part of him realized what he had thrown away. That was my first victory. But I didn't want just small victories. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices. So, I started planting seeds. When Sophie bragged about her new life with Michael, I would casually drop little reminders of his past mistakes, his drinking problem, the time he almost got fired, the debts he once had that I helped him pay off. I wasn't lying. I was just reminding her that the man she had stolen was far from perfect. And when Michael looked frustrated with Sophie's immaturity, I would laugh softly and say, "Yeah, she's always been a little reckless. Remember when I used to cover for her?" The tension between them grew. Slowly, quietly, I was pushing them toward cracks they couldn't see, but I could. Still, I knew words alone wouldn't be enough. I needed something bigger. Something unforgettable. So, I began documenting everything. Michael's lingering texts to me when Sophie wasn't around. Sophie's reckless spending habits. Every cruel word, every slip-up, every weakness. I kept a journal, not of my pain anymore, but of their flaws. Their secrets. Their cracks. And when the time was right, I would use them. Not in rage, but with precision. Like a scalpel, not a hammer. Because true revenge isn't loud. It's silent. It doesn't come with screaming or chaos. It comes with the quiet realization that you've lost everything, and the person you tried to destroy is standing taller than ever. For now, I played the role of the sister who had moved on. I smiled at family dinners. I asked Sophie about her life. I pretended to be civil with Michael. But inside, I was sharpening my weapons. I was no longer Anna, the betrayed wife. I was Anna, the survivor. Anna, the fighter. Anna, the woman who would take back everything they stole. And when the time came, Sophie and Michael would never see it coming. Revenge isn't about rage. It isn't about shouting or throwing things. True revenge is a game of patience. And by now, I had learned to be patient. Every tear, every sleepless night, every whispered insult, it all fed a fire inside me that no one could extinguish. I started quietly. Michael and Sophie thought I was still broken, fragile, harmless. Perfect. I kept a record of everything, their late-night calls, the subtle lies, the boasts they couldn't resist making to friends. I documented Michael's financial mistakes, Sophie's reckless spending, and their constant disrespect toward people who had once supported them. Every slip-up, every careless boast, went into my journal. Not for revenge yet, not fully, but as ammunition. I also began collecting proof of their hypocrisy. Sophie pretended to be the perfect girlfriend to everyone else, but I knew the real her, the greedy, cruel, self-centered woman who had destroyed my life. Michael was supposed to be the loving husband, but his true colors were on display for me to see every day. And I watched. I learned. I waited. Sophie loved social media. She loved showing off her perfect life with Michael. So, I made sure her posts weren't as flawless as she thought. I began asking innocent questions in comments, dropping small hints to mutual friends about inconsistencies in her stories. Nothing overt. Just enough to create doubt. Then came the whispers. People began noticing little cracks. "Are they really that happy?" friends would ask. I didn't have to say a word, I let Sophie's own behavior do the talking. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So, I started reconnecting with old friends who had distanced themselves. I explained things carefully, without slandering Sophie or Michael. I simply told my truth, let them see the real me again. People were shocked, but they remembered me, the Anna who had always been kind, reliable, smart. Slowly, I was gaining allies. And in time, those allies would become the instruments of my revenge. At the same time, I wasn't just playing a mental game. I was transforming myself into someone they could never break. I took on new projects, worked harder, exercised more, and invested in myself. My confidence wasn't just back, it was sharpened, focused, unstoppable. No one could see it yet, but the Anna they had tried to destroy had become a weapon. And the weapon was ready. By now, I was no longer the woman they thought they could control. The quiet, broken Anna was gone. In her place stood someone they would soon recognize, but only after the damage was done. Michael had always been proud of his financial prowess. He liked to show off his achievements and pretend he had it all together. But I knew the truth. I began by asking him subtle questions in front of friends and colleagues, innocent-sounding queries that hinted at his mismanagement, his secret debts, and his past mistakes. I never lied. I simply reminded people of things they didn't want to remember. Soon, whispers started. People began questioning his perfect image. Michael grew nervous, unsure how to handle the doubt creeping into his life. And that uncertainty? That was my first small victory. Sophie thrived on attention and admiration. She craved validation and the illusion of a perfect life. I gave her cracks to exploit. In conversations with mutual friends, I casually mentioned things Sophie had done that revealed her arrogance, her recklessness, her selfishness. Nothing slanderous, just truths she couldn't deny. And soon, friends who once admired her began seeing the real Sophie. Subtle mistrust crept into her relationships. Invitations stopped. Compliments became scarce. People who had flocked to her attention began keeping distance. I watched silently, a quiet smile forming. Sophie didn't even notice the shift yet. But the cracks were growing. Every move had to be calculated. I couldn't afford mistakes. Each action, each word, each casual revelation was a piece on a chessboard. I reinforced my own image, confident, successful, unstoppable, while subtly allowing Sophie and Michael to make errors in public perception. I didn't attack, I let them reveal their flaws themselves. And the more they tried to maintain their perfect image, the faster their house of cards wobbled. By now, the invisible threads I had been pulling were unraveling their carefully built world. Sophie and Michael had no idea who they were up against. They thought I was defeated, quiet, harmless, but they had underestimated me entirely. This was the moment I had prepared for. Every tear I had cried, every sleepless night, every ounce of my pain had led me here. Sophie's social circle had started to shrink. Friends who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Invitations she expected never arrived. Every attempt she made to flaunt her perfect life was met with skepticism. And I was always there, smiling, polite, calm. I never celebrated her missteps publicly. I let her make the mistakes herself. One evening, at a small dinner party, Sophie tried to dominate the conversation. But subtle comments from mutual friends, which I had carefully encouraged, highlighted inconsistencies in her stories. I watched her face change from confident to flustered. She tried to laugh it off, but the cracks were visible. Michael, on the other hand, was crumbling quietly. His pride, his arrogance, the carefully curated image of the perfect husband he had tried to project, all were eroding. I didn't need to attack him directly. I simply existed as a reminder of what he had lost. Every confident smile, every personal victory, every subtle success I achieved was a reflection of his failure. At a mutual friends gathering, I caught the way he looked at me, regret, guilt, and a hint of fear. He had chosen the wrong side. He had sided with betrayal, and now, the consequences were clear. The final act required patience. I didn't need to yell or shame them. Instead, I let the truth speak for itself. I organized a small reunion for close friends and family under the guise of moving on and making peace. I invited Michael and Sophie, and they accepted, confident in their control over the room. During casual conversation, I allowed Sophie and Michael's own arrogance to expose them. Their bragging, their lies, their mistreatment of friends and family, all came to light, naturally. By the end of the evening, their perfect image was shattered. Friends whispered. Eyes darted. Sophie's smirk vanished, replaced by anxiety. Michael's confident posture slouched. And I? I stood tall, calm, composed. The woman they had tried to destroy was untouchable, victorious. I didn't humiliate them. I didn't yell. I simply reclaimed my life. Revenge isn't about cruelty, it's about justice. It's about balance. Sophie and Michael learned that choices have consequences, that betrayal has a cost, and that the person you try to destroy may rise stronger than you ever imagined. I smiled to myself that night, knowing that my power didn't come from breaking them, but from rebuilding me. The broken, humiliated Anna of the past no longer existed. I was Anna, the survivor, the strategist, the unstoppable woman who had taken her life back, piece by piece. Betrayal is painful, but it's also enlightening. It teaches you where your strength lies, who you truly are, and what you are capable of. I had learned the hard way that sometimes the people you love the most are capable of the deepest betrayal. But I had also learned that you are capable of rising, no matter how dark the world seems. And in the end, that is the true victory.